Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another midweek episode of Seek Travel Ride, where I share what it was like for you, our listeners, during one day of your trip. Today we're going to be taken to Patagonia with listeners Vaiva and Stephen, who are currently on a big tour through South America. I've been fortunate enough to interview a few guests who have toured through this region in the world, and those dreamy landscapes, well, what I've learned is that there's a price to pay to take them in more often than not, and it has to do with the weather. No surprises then to hear that this story involves having to deal with some pretty inclement weather that was both physically and mentally demanding. Before we get into Vaiva and Stephen's story, just a reminder that at the end of June this year, I am leading a bikepacking adventure in the stunning foothills of the Pyrenees, and I would love nothing more than for you to join me. It's going to be across 6 nights, which means 5 days of riding through breathtaking landscapes, awesome little French villages, and you're going to be enjoying great company, all without the stress of having to carry heavy camping or cooking gear as well. Now, I want to keep the experiences genuine, which means keeping group sizes small, so spaces are very limited. To book your spot, go to the link which I have in the show notes, or simply head to seektravelride.com. You'll see the sign-up page there, and you can book your place. I cannot wait to have you join me. Don't delay, hit the link now. Okay, now let's transport ourselves to one day of Vaiva and Stephen's trip, and we're going to hit those dreamy landscapes in Patagonia. Take us away.
Hi Bella, I'm Vaiva.
And I'm Stephen.
And we've been cycling around Latin America for over a year now.
Yeah, so as you may imagine, we've had many days that have been pretty eventful, but we've both agreed on a day that we think definitely deserves mention because it was a massive mental and physical challenge.
So that day happened in Chile, in Torres del Paine National Park. And we had a really tough day a day before, where we pretty much sat in the bus stop for half a day because we couldn't pedal at all. So we checked the wind for the next day, and everything seemed to be okay for cycling into Torres del Paine National Park. But
yeah, it was the wind before was absolutely brutal, and yeah, we thought, okay, it'll be okay this next day. Keep an eye on the wind fork, as you have to in Chile and Patagonia, or Patagonia in general. And we got up, crack of dawn, 3 a.m, after having slept in this bus stop just outside the park. Mainly to avoid the winds, because the winds pick up kind of late morning to early afternoon. And we knew there'd be a bit, but didn't think it would be as bad as it ended up being. So we went in, enjoyed the beautiful sunrise, cycled into the park. It was very quiet because not many people go in at that time. And
we met a few workers who were kind of starting their shift very, very early in the morning. Said hello to them, had a wee chat, and yeah, just continued cycling on.
Yeah, and it was like a light switch, probably about 11, 12 o'clock. And out of nowhere, this wind just started absolutely pounding us. It was like wind we have never experienced before. It's hard to describe, but it kind of started off with, you'd hear like a clap of thunder sort of over the hilltops. And then you'd see the wind coming towards you, sort of this rush of things blowing and mini tornadoes appearing and stuff like that, and it would just pick up all the grit and the gravel from the road and just throw it at us. And it was really quite painful, like getting this grit and gravel constantly thrown in your face and at your legs, and really like never experienced anything like that before.
Yeah, it was absolutely wild. At some point there was a little stretch of road where the wind was kind of coming from both directions and then colliding in the middle, and I was caught right in the middle of it, and I think I dropped my bike 3 times before I managed to get out of it.
Yeah, it happened several times. We kind of pushed on with this kind of apocalyptic wind around us, our bike regularly being dropped, and we got down to this little sort of almost like a valley between 2 sort of steep bits of road, if you like. It was strange. There were 2 little lakes in the valley anyway, And we kind of pushed our bike up one side because it was really steep. And when we got to the top of the lip of the hill by the lakes, it was like the wind was, I used my entire body weight up against the bike and I was still getting knocked over. It was just ridiculous. So we thought at this stage, no, we'll go down to the lake and we'll just wait there and hopefully it'll abate and it'll slow down a bit. And we sat by the lake and the wind decided to pick up the water from the lake and throw it at us. So we were sat there absolutely soaked because we were getting this water picked up off the lake and thrown in our faces. And it's just absolutely insane.
Yeah, we were sitting by that lake, getting soaked and getting covered in dust, and we were thinking what to do. So eventually we made the decision just to turn around because I think we cycled into the park, 16 kilometers into the park, and it was actually kind of easier to just turn around and cycle back rather than continue going forward because we didn't know what conditions were awaiting us going forward, and we thought, oh, we still have a lot of gravel to tackle. So we thought, okay, let's turn around and let's go back down, and then hopefully that helps.
Yeah, so kind of going back, I naively thought, it'll be a tailwind because it was mostly in our faces going to the little lakes where we turned around. No, it was just a vortex. The wind was coming from every direction. It was really at its kind of strongest at this point. And I remember at one point, Vaiva had kind of pushed ahead and it was a little kind of stretch of road. And I just ended up stuck in this vortex of wind. So it was battering me from both sides. I couldn't move the bike. And I remember this car driving past and this lady just sort of shrugging and sheepishly looking at me like, oh, well, mate, you chose to do this. It was almost like that sort of came into my head. That, yeah, she's right. We have chosen to do this, so you just get on with it. But her look was just like, no human should be out there. It's your own fault sort of thing, because it was absolutely insane.
Yeah, there were a lot of kind of looks of pity. But then this wonderful thing happened. There was this guy driving past us, and he stopped his van, jumped out, and came running towards us and then handed a few oranges and cereal bars to Stephen, and he was just shouting, Viva la experiencia!
Yeah, I was trying to take the oranges and the cereal bars while I was saying, gracias, gracias, while trying to hold my bike up with the other hand because of the wind, and he was getting blown all over the place and shouting something in my ear. I have no idea what he said because it was so loud all around us. But again, it just shows like no matter what the conditions are, wherever you are, people are almost always out to support cyclists, and people are nice wherever you go, and yeah, urging you on sort of thing. So it was a nice touch to what was an absolutely horrendously difficult day.
And then it got worse as well.
Yeah, it did. So basically, we kind of got a few kilometers in the space of an hour or so. And the wind blew it was blowing stones at us all day, but a stone got blown into my brake. So it warped the little bit of metal that holds the brake pads together. And it warped it so much that it was pushing against the rotor and the wheel wouldn't turn. So we had to hunker down in a ditch, basically, and try and find a little bit of shelter from the wind to flip my bike and remove the wheel and the brake with all this wind going on around us. And it was ridiculous. I had to take the brake out and just cycle out of the park with one functioning brake because there was no way I could replace it at that point. Yeah, sort of the icing on the cake, if you like.
Yeah, it was a very steep descent and you were cycling down with no brakes whatsoever.
Yeah.
So one brake,
well, yeah.
Just one brake.
It might as well have been no brakes because it was really steep, like you said. And still, though, that little bit coming out of the park took us a long time.
Yeah, I think it took us 3 hours to do 16 kilometers, just kind of mostly downhill and mostly tailwind, mostly.
Yeah, but when we say tailwind, it's like it would push you with such force that you'd be getting sort of pushed diagonally across the road and almost into the ditch. So it wasn't much of a beneficial tailwind. So you're constantly trying to stay balanced while freewheel out of this park. So,
I fell so many times. It was incredible.
Yeah, I think we fell the most we've fallen this whole trip. We haven't fallen many times at all, actually. But I think that one day was probably the same amount as we have in the entire trip.
Yeah.
It felt like it.
And then we made it down the mountain to the park entrance and we thought, okay, this is it. We can relax now. And then we cycled out and here we go. There was headwind. So we
Yeah,
had to tackle headwind for the next, I think, 10K or so.
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
along the main road, and yeah, picked up all the salt from one of the lakes, so that it was just like a white haze all around us. It was really bizarre. Kind of been fitting with how the day had been. And yeah, we kind of eventually got that all the way down to the other side. And just as it was kind of coming to sunset, we met the same workers we'd met in the morning. These guys just starting their shift first thing in the morning. We met them just packing up at night. And they looked at us and you could just see they were like, oh, these guys have been through it. We were just like, our hair like wire because of the amount of dust in our hair and completely bedraggled, caked in dirt. And yeah, we had a little chat and a laugh with them. And they were like, yeah, it's pretty brutal up there, especially you can't trust any forecast because the wind is a life of its own. And we really learned that day.
Yeah, the forecast in the morning said there was barely any wind, and yeah, I wish there wasn't any.
Yeah.
But we cycled back to the same bus shelter we slept the night before, and we just looked at each other and we were like we couldn't believe what happened to us that day.
Yeah, back to the same spot as we started the day. We had planned obviously to go around the park to the other side, but yeah, it wasn't happening. And it was just kind of a real mental and physical test. But I think when you're in that situation, you realize that you just have to push on. Like, there's nothing else you can do. You know, no one's going to take us. No one's going to get out of their car. Like, not a chance to pick us up. And it was just like little motivating factors, like the guy giving us oranges, and it really keeps you going. And it's after a day like that, when you reflect on it, you truly realize, you know, you can pretty much do anything. Like, if you can experience on a bike, you know, if you experience weather and things like that, the elements against you, I think it was, quite a turning point.
It was, absolutely. And I think when you don't have an option, you just have to put your head down and you have to keep going. And that's when it kind of your character and your strength comes out. And it's such a good feeling at the end of the day. It just feels like such a big sense of achievement.
Yeah, definitely agree.
Yeah, it was a good day.
Yeah, that's pretty much our day summarised. One of the toughest days, but most rewarding in its own sense, I would say, of our trip. Yeah, hope that was interesting to listen to.
Wow, Vaiva and Stephen, if I was to describe your day in a few words, the ones that come to the top of my mind are challenging, grit, brutal, bedraggled. One of those experiences that will live long in your memory. Recent podcast guest, Jamie Hargreaves, he was saying how it's the hard times that he remembers and treasures the most. And I wonder whether you both resonate with that feeling as well. I've experienced really windy weather on a ride, wind that sort of blown me across the road, brought me to a stop many times. And in the moment, it's just the worst thing in the world. And then to hear how your story kept unfolding, adding an extra level, the idea that you had so much of a hard time in that headwind heading out that you turned around on yourselves, fully expecting, and I believe deservedly so, thinking at least we'll have a tailwind. But no, Mother Nature says, hold my beer, and bang, just bashes you with headwinds, side winds, all types of winds. Wow. I bet the cereal bar and oranges were definitely a mental lift, and I had to chuckle at the idea that you're seeing the exact same workers at the other end of the day, having both just completed probably the most physically and mentally demanding day of cycling on this tour so far as well. Listeners, I'm extremely thrilled to say that I will be taking the time to catch up with Vaiva and Stephen for a proper long feature-length episode to hear all about their travels. We're planning it for a couple of months' time when they are on another rest day there. So keep your eyes peeled later on in the year to hear more about their amazing adventures. And thank you, Stephen and Vaiva, for sharing your story. Now, once again, we've come up to that time of the show where I absolutely love being able to give you, my superfans, a special shout out for taking the time and effort to buy me some virtual coffees. Today I'm shouting out Rochelle, who says, Absolutely loving your podcast. So many guests and adventures to live vicariously until I take my next. I especially love the reminder that we can enjoy smaller, even just day adventures in our own local area, rather than waiting for the day with kids to have grown or have enough time, money, health, or courage to undertake some of these epic challenges. I also love the acknowledgement of some guests that they want an adventure for the joy of the journey. To have a bed, shower, and decent food each day definitely appeals to me. So many adventures seem to suffer endlessly that it starts to make you think it's not a real adventure without the suffering. Thank you so much, Rochelle, and I think you brought up some amazingly valid points there, ones which I really had to relearn myself last year. I didn't have time for big adventures, I could only take small trips, and yet the feelings I had taking those small trips, it was like a circuit breaker for me emotionally, and it gave me the energizing feeling of everything that I seek out when I take a bike adventure, even though at times it may have even only been an overnighter. And I'm also with you that an adventure doesn't need to be a sufferfest. This is something that I saw posed as a question on Instagram recently of, can we still call it an adventure if we're having fun and there's no struggle involved? And I definitely think, yes, you can. To me, struggle doesn't have to be what we seek out for adventure. To me, an adventure is all about stepping into the unknown. And so I think what you're saying there, that it doesn't need to be a sufferfest to still be an adventure, I'm fully on board with that. Listeners, if you want to do as Rochelle has done and support me to continue bringing you these amazing adventure stories of bike travel, just hit the link, buy me a coffee. I've got it there in the show notes. Buy me a coffee and most importantly, share a message with me. Tell me about your bike adventures, what you love about the podcast. And also, I'd like to know, what does the word adventure mean to you? Until the next episode, I'm Bella Malloy. Thanks for listening. Hey there, adventurers. Are you loving the stories on Seek Travel Ride? If so, you can help the podcast wheels turning, literally. Head to the link in the show notes and buy me a coffee. Every coffee fuels this podcast, supports incredible guest stories, and keeps the adventure alive. So go ahead, click the link in the show notes, grab me a virtual brew, and let's ride on together.